which has an enrollment of about 2,100 students. Adam oversees all 24 sports from the standpoint of performance training. And the high school employs velocity-based training using weight-up solutions with all of its varsity athletes. Adam is also the assistant coach for the football team, and he uses Catapult GPS monitoring with a number of the school's teams. Let's welcome Adam.
Hi guys. So Kyle's like brilliant. So like I always, when I walk in the room, I'm like, it's like, you ever seen the movie Top Gun, right? And you're always like, who's the best, right? So I always think that. I knew walking into this conference, I'm like, I'm definitely the worst. I don't know. You guys are all smarter than me, okay? Just so you guys know that. Like, so it's weird that I'm speaking. But I'm going to talk more about the application of some of the analytics that we use at the high school level, and kind of like from a strength coach or a coach's perspective, how we kind of do some things and how we look at it, as opposed to like you guys always look at the numbers and the analytical part and how we have to deal with the people, because that's what I'm about. Is it's about the people that we're working with. We're trying to make them better athletes, trying to make them better people, so that then when they graduate high school, hopefully they're great mothers, great fathers, and great spouses. So those are the things that we're looking at when we kind of get into some of this stuff. And so when I talk about that, like that's my wife there, my 2-year-old daughter, my 4-month-old boy right there, there too. So I always got to thank them because they drive me. They're the ones that the reason why I work and why I want to do these things, and I love what I do, but they also make me miss being home. So I got to talk about them. That's our weight room. We're really fortunate to have what we have for high school. It's pretty impressive. So, but we also make the most of it. So I always tell our athletes, it's not what we have, it's how we use it. And actually, our freshmen always start out underneath the bleachers, and they have to earn their way into the weight room. So it's not a privilege, or it's a privilege to be in there. It's not a right. Then our 2 guys down there, like I said, it's about the people. I got a lot of, like, the one's my nephew, the other one's Yassine. So hopefully he becomes a sports scientist. He really wants to do this really bad. So he helps me with Catapult and helping with tracking the players. So we got students involved in it as well. With a lot of things that we do, because I'm one person. There's no way that I miss way more than I catch. So why we get in player monitoring at the high school level? Why do we do it? And I think that the important thing is that everybody can use it, just depending on what level you want to use it at, or how you want to use it, because it is going to help. It is going to help you guys, whether even if you don't like want to track it to wins. Like I don't mind, like as a strength coach, we want to do no harm. As an athletic trainer, we want to do no harm. And so if we know any insight about our athletes that we can use to make sure that we keep them healthy, we want to do those things. And so that's what kind of got us into this into this spiral that we're in right now with our high school, and trying to, like, back in 2015, our football team did the best they've ever done. We had a 6-3 season. I'm like, what the heck? I thought we had a really good team. But then we go and we get everything put together. We played really tough teams in our conferences, so that's what I think why. We had 2 undefeated teams that we lost to, and then one team that only lost 1 game. So I think that was why we lost 3 games. But then we got to the playoffs, we made a run, and we were literally a yard or 2 seconds short, however you want to put it, from going to the state championship game, which our team has never done. We've never been past the quarterfinals in the history of our school. And so when we were looking at that stuff, our coaches were in a very interesting position, because we didn't know, okay, are we training our athletes enough? Do we need to back them off? You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to win the game, but at the same time, we know we got to keep our guys healthy. And we look back at our stats with that season, we realized that we only had 1 starter miss any game time. So then we were like, okay, there's something to this. We got to kind of figure some of this stuff out. And so it kind of led me onto a path of what we're going to do, which I'll get to in a second. But when we were talking about analytics, I presented to the coaches and said, hey, we're going to start looking at data and trying to use usable information. And some of them were like just like you guys talk about, they're kind of reluctant to it. And so one way I got them hooked was I said, we already use analytics, okay? We use it we use Huddle, like collegiate level uses XOs. And so we already use analytics. We break down tendencies all the time with our football team. All of our sports actually utilize Huddle, so they all do some sort of tendency report. Depending on the sport, the level is a little bit different. But we had those things. So I said, you look at third and long behind the 50. We look at formational changes and personnel changes and things like that. And we use those percentages to make decisions. that's what we're doing is the same thing. We're just going to use it now to make decisions on our athletes as opposed to what we're going to do to the opposing team. So after that season in 2015, we had a conference realignment. A couple schools left because our conference was really tough, and then another school consolidated. And so we got moved to the big division. We're 2100, like Andy Wright said, and we're playing schools at 3500, 3800, and so our coach's like, we're not going to be able to compete. We're going to get our butts kicked, and so he's like freaking out, and he goes, we have to figure something out. So we start digging, trying to figure out what we're going to do, and that's what kind of led us to this path, is taking a different approach. And so when we started looking at those things, we were like, okay, what other places have been successful with limited resources or limited means of being able to do things? And so that's where this, I call it the Australian model, because a lot of stuff comes from Australia originally. Like, I mean, Kyle was talking about Tim Gaddett and things like that, with player monitoring and things along those lines. So what we ended up doing is, at first I looked at the SEC and I saw there's Missouri and there's Texas A&M that got put into, that went into the SEC, and they had a little bit of success early on. And so I'm like, okay, they kind of got something going there. And then eventually I'm kind of like, well, they threw a lot of money at things. We don't have that kind of money. So how are we going to do it? I know you've seen Catapult. That's expensive. So I'll get to that too. What we end up doing is we looked at. I said, okay, well, let's look at different sports. Let's not look at football. Let's look outside of our realm. And we said, well, Olympics. Okay, there's very small countries that do very well in the Olympics, and there's other countries that have a plethora of athletes like us, like the U.S., that always do really well as well. So we said, if we had to pick a country, we're gonna say that we're more like Australia. We're like a third or quarter of the size of the U.S. Okay, so we don't have. If we're looking at 3,800 versus 2,000, this makes sense now. So we got to keep our athletes healthy. What are they doing to make sure that they get their athletes to the Olympics and compete for gold medals? And so that's with this. I'm not going to go deep into it, but with the Australian Institute of Sport and those types of things, we found Catapult, philosophy-based training, which we use Weight Up, which we're going to talk later today too. So is Catapult, so that we could try and train our athletes better, or at least more, at least have another metric to look at, so we try to keep their safety a little bit more in line. And then I'll get a little bit into the questionnaires that we use with Team Builder and Kinda. So our goal with GPS and Catapult, and why we wanted to get them first, was because we wanted to mitigate the chance of injuries in performance modality training, but we wanted to know what's going on in the field, and then we can work backwards, right? And so that's what we ended up doing. So we were lucky to be the first school to get Catapult at the high school level. Now they got a whole sub-elite. They call it with player tech that they're using. We're using GP Sport because they didn't acquire player tech yet, which I'm real happy with GP Sport. But so they kind of had a market that they were kind of going for, so it made it affordable for our school to have it. So some of the things that we looked at when we said of our goals is that we're trying to mitigate injury, trying to enhance performance, and make sure that we're doing the right thing with our training. Is we look at running symmetry, distance, okay, player load, which is a big one. The kids love looking at speed, miles per hour. And heart rate, we haven't got into that. I put that there because I want to look at the internal load. I'm just not versed in heart rate variability yet, and so I want to continue to learn that, so I'm not going to touch on that. But when we got, with GP Sport, we can run symmetry, so this is something that, like, my trainer and I, Jason, our trainer, is a great guy. He worked with the Packers for a couple years, so we're real fortunate to have him. He looks at the run symmetry side a lot more than I do. And then we'll meet every day at 2 o'clock before school gets out and go over some of the things that we see. And so when we look at running symmetry, one of the things we just look at is how we look at it, how we do it is if we see 5% on a day, we're just going to raise an eyebrow and go, okay, what's going on? Okay, it might just be like an offensive lineman and he's kick stepping back. I'm going to use football. We use it for soccer. We use it for track. We use it for cheerleading actually too. Basketball, we used it a little bit with them as well. Like I was saying, back to my wheelhouse of football, if an offensive lineman's kick stepping and he's the right tackle, he's going to be using his right leg more. So we make sure that when we dig into that a little bit deeper, trying to figure out what's going on, okay, then we'll look at foot strikes, or if it's just one day, it's just one day, okay? You might have had a bad day, who knows when that happened, but if we see that 5% over the course of a few more days, then all of a sudden we're going to dig deeper because we're trying to manage a lot of athletes. I train 650 athletes at least twice a week, me and my other strength coach. And so we got to make sure we manage what we're looking at, and not just we can't just spend hours and hours on one athlete. So if we see that it's over 5%, then that's when our athletic trainer is going to pull them in and have a conversation. So he'll go out to practice and say, hey, when there's a break or they're gonna drink, or when he sees them going by the locker room, because the training room's right next to the locker room, that's when he'll say, hey, come here, I need to see real quick, what's going on, man, is everything all right? And he'll assess those things. So we can see if they're leaning one way or the other, which basically means that they have something going on. And it's crazy how, I'm gonna give you some real life examples, it's crazy how like accurate this is, because like we had a kid at like 13%, 13%, and when we first did it, we had this soccer player, and so I didn't know anything about this, and we're kind of watching it. It goes from like 6 or 8 to almost 9, and then all of a sudden it gets 13, she sprains her ankle. So I'm like, okay, there's something here, like we should have intervened, and so that's where we kind of got those numbers. And we'll see, like this girl, this is actually from the soccer team, this girl had a ACL tear that she had surgery on when she was like a freshman or sophomore, and so she always leans a little bit heavy to her right side because it was on her left knee. So then we look at distance. Basically, it depends on the sport. I'll look at total distance if it's soccer, because there's a lot of more distance that they're running. But if it's football, I just care about their high-speed distance. Okay, so we're going to look and see where they're at high-speed distance. And what we're going to do this year, which is going to be really cool, is the guys that were juniors and sophomores at Warwick, is we had their previous day's practices. So like our Monday practice is pretty much always the same. So we're going to be able to look at their Monday practice. Did they hit the same distance, or were they less? Okay, we're going to do the same thing with their player load as well, so we can really kind of see and match it. It'll also make it kind of competitive for the athletes as well when they're going through those things. So player load, this is the one that I probably put the most weight in too, and it's called body load on GP Sport. That's why you see the two different names. But this is just relative score taking into account the last 10 days, with the last 3 days being the most heavily weighted. And so then I know who worked the hardest, like who had the most energy, who had like a hard load, and we'll compare that to their RPE scores. We'll also say like this was one of the hardest games that they played. It was against Bolingbrook. We beat them in going for 2 on the less than a minute and a half go, so it was pretty cool. But like this kid played his tail off, and you can see his load's really high. This kid doesn't play very. This is kind of funny. This kid doesn't play very much, but his load was high. Like he's a long snapper for us, and he's actually the backup long snapper. So he kind of like we do black jersey nights. So they have a night where they get to keep the black jersey. Like that's literally why he's out for the team. And so you can tell how into the game he was, because he didn't play in the game, but his score was really high. So it's kind of funny, you know. But then we'll look at, besides just looking at the daily loads and what they're doing, this is our football season, going by the games. And so when Kyle was talking about that Tim Gavin thing with the workload ratio, basically we're trying to keep them in the highway here, right? We want to try to keep them down. We don't want to overwork them, and we don't want to underwork them. And so always in the beginning of the season, your workload's going to be higher because it's training camp and they haven't done anything really yet, even if you haven't been doing the conditioning and stuff, which you're still going to have those high loads at the beginning. And so the red trend line is our acute load. Okay, the blue is our chronic load. This is looking at the team. And so we went undefeated, which was awesome. But like there's a couple weeks. I think it was this week and this week was pretty high because we were playing Lincoln Way East the next week. And so one of the things that we wanted to experiment, because I was talking to a strength coach that was at Notre Dame, and he said, look, if you have those times where they're healthy and ready to go, you can get their load back up in season if you know you're going to win that game. And so we were 6-0, we were playing a team that was like 1-5. And so our coaches, we get in the coaches meeting, and our head coach is a great guy, I love him, but he's like, hey, we need to just keep everybody healthy. We're going to light this week. I think we might take Wednesday off. And I said, no, we're not. And he's like, what are you talking about? We're going to kill him this week. And I said, we are going to smash him so hard. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, we're going to do everything we can to just get their workload really high, unless they're an injured athlete. If they're an athlete that has like a sprained ankle or just something soft tissue issue, okay, we're not going to get on that kid. And so like, how do we get on them? Okay, well, like we said, we're talking about stressors and stuff with that previous presentation, how they use them anyway. We don't have that, but they get stressed out when coaches yell at them. Okay, so I said, we're going to yell at them and everything. If they don't run to the football, typically if on defense, if they don't run to the football, we had that guy do 2 up downs and then he goes back to the huddle. We said, if one guy doesn't run the football, the whole entire defense, even if you're on the sideline, everybody's doing up downs. And so we got their load as high as we could within the reason of the highway that we're talking about down here. And so we played like crap that game against Urbana, and my coach is freaking out, and he's like, "You said this is gonna work today." I said, "Hey, be patient. We're gonna go by what we heard, okay?" And so then next week we play Lincoln Way East, who we never beat before. They were ranked number 3 in the state, and we routed them early, 38-7, and jumped them. And when we went to that practice week, I said, we're not gonna do anything. We're not gonna get on them. Just coach normal. Just be super, super encourageable to them. And that's what we did. And they were ready. Like it just worked for us. And so we got another game coming up this year. We're gonna try the same thing to try and validate that a little bit more. The last thing I'm showing you a slide though is if you look at the end, okay, we undertrained our athletes. And so I was just talking to Cal during lunch, who's going to present on Catapult. He's saying like, it doesn't matter, like when you get into the season, there's certain coaches that you're just gonna go back, even though you got the data, you got the information, you're gonna fall back to your gut, right? And so we kind of did that at the end of the season was, we ended up, the team that we lost in the semifinals was the team that we played in the first round, so our kids were ready for that game to do well. So then the second game, but during that week, we had some rainouts, and so we don't have a field house or anything, and so their loads naturally came down. Well, they looked good against Libertyville. They want to beat them because they lost last year. Then the next week, because our soccer team's doing so well and we're doing well, and they're both wearing Catapult, and we're doing velocity-based training with them and all that kind of stuff, we have to share the turf field that we're using. And so the soccer team wanted to get a little bit more time, and our coach was being accommodating and let them. And you can see how low the loads got from doing that. And we go and play Plainfield North, was the team that we lost to this year, and our kids' eyes are wide open. It looked like we never played football before. And was that the only factor? No, but it was one of them. We undertrained our athletes. So we always talk about like not doing too much. We can also do too little and have things happen as well. So going over some of the results of this first year using it. And I had my trainer track this stuff so that like we're talking about bias, I didn't want to have a bias. So we had 75 athletes wear it. Okay, we had 14 soft tissue injuries, but of those 14, 0 games were missed. So I thought that was really, really, really good. We didn't have any athletes that were wearing Catapult our first year have any soft tissue injuries, which is unbelievable. We did have 3 concussions. I think 2 of them were players that played for us. The other one was a third string guy that had a concussion in practice. Then we went to our winter athletes. We had cheerleading wear it. Okay, and then if anybody knows anything about cheerleading, it's actually a really high injury sport. That's why we put it on those girls. And we had 1 soft tissue injury, which is pretty good. And they didn't miss any competitions either. We kind of hit a little bit of a thing in spring. Okay, we had 7 girls in soccer miss out on competitions, and it was more of a I'm sorry, not 7 girls, 7 competitions missed. So I think it was between 3 or 4 girls, and most of them, I think one was a 5th metatarsal. One was that girl I showed you with her knee that had surgery on it. So we're trying to figure that out. My theory is we had a lot of rain games, a lot of games that were rained out. So our team, our -1 practice isn't as hard as our other practices. And so when they get rained out, well, they do the makeup the next day. Well, that's 2 days of low training. And so we probably undertrain them when those types of things happen. But good results too. Football and soccer went 35-1, 3rd place for our soccer team, which is unbelievable. First time our cheerleading team went co-ed and they qualified for state, and then our girls soccer team made the regional final, which they hadn't won a regional game in 4 years. And then we got an unbelievable guy that plays football and track. Then another one that we had 2 of them. One's going to over soccer, one's going to Iowa, and so he just kills it at state track meet. So that's one part we talk about right on the field. So we wanted to work backwards. We want to get to some velocity-based training. So because I'm a strength coach, I'm like, well, we're doing all this stuff on the field, but what's my role then, really? Besides monitoring that, what's my role as a strength coach? And so we got to a point now where we have, I think I've been there for 5 years, and we're up to 10 or 12 athletes that have cleaned over 300 pounds.